your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, or as they say in Blackfoot, Okie. I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for what made headlines in Alberta during Truth and Reconciliation Week. New research says many young nurses are leaving the healthcare profession in Canada. The report from the Montreal Economic Institute says around 40% of nurses under the age of 35 are bailing on the industry in Canada, while here in Alberta, the number is even higher at 48%. The co-author of the report, Crystal Vitavrongo, explains why so many nurses are wanting out and why some are considering moves to the U.S.
It is a lack of long-term flexibility and the structural components that make an already difficult job harder. We've got mandatory overtime, you've got a lack of shift flexibility, and really very little to no work-life balance.
Vitavrongo says the restructuring of AHS needs to be examined and how the decentralization can support frontline workers. A new study says Alberta has the 5th highest average star rating for hospitals. The research done by Presler Injury Lawyers reviewed Google data as to which provinces had the highest and lowest ratings in Canada. The province said with the best access to patient care was Manitoba, following an analysis of 19 hospitals. Second place was British Columbia after 66 hospitals were analyzed. Quebec came in third with their 138 healthcare facilities. Saskatchewan was fourth based on reviews of 17 hospitals. And again, Alberta was ranked fifth following Google reviews of 74 hospitals. Nova Scotia was number 6 with their 21 hospitals. Ontario was ranked number 7 following an analysis of 147 healthcare facilities. And New Brunswick with their 15 hospitals was ranked number 8. The findings by Presler Injury Lawyers only featured the top 8 hospitals. Construction continues for the twinning of Highway 3 between Taber and Burdett. Bill Chapman, Coaldale councillor and past president of the Highway 3 Twinning Development Association, says the project appears to be on time and on budget. He also discussed why there was such a push to get that portion of the highway twinned.
Safety is obviously first and foremost on everybody's minds, and of course, everybody needs to get from A to B and in a safe manner. And the mix of big trucks and small cars don't mix. And of course, we know the results of some of those situations. And I think that everyone traveling highways really want to be able to travel without conflict and be able to travel in those lanes and enjoy the comfort of the ride.
Chapman says the first 46 kilometers of the highway should be completed by 2026. The UCP now has their candidate for the Lethbridge West riding. Lethbridge City Councillor John Middleton Hope won on the first ballot Monday night when he received 2 votes over 50%. He defeated Aaron Leclerc, a former constituency officer manager, and Shauna Gruninger, a Lethbridge real estate agent. The final vote tally was 289 votes for Milton Hope to Leclerc's 193. Gruninger received 51 votes. Milton Hope will now take on former Lethbridge City Councillor Rob Miyashiro with the NDP. He says he is up for the challenge.
I think people in Lethbridge have a choice, and that choice is, do they want to continue with the New Democrats and have a representative from Lethbridge in opposition for the next 3 years, or do they want to elect somebody who can win against Rob Miyashiro, who is going to actually be part of the government and is not only a part of the government, but is able to advocate on behalf of the citizens of Lethbridge for the next 3 years.
Lethbridge West has been without an MLA since July 1st after former NDP cabinet minister Shannon Phillips stepped down. The man who died in Calgary police custody has been identified as 42-year-old John Wells and who was a member of the Blood Tribe. Back on September 17th, police in Calgary were called to the Carriage House Inn on reports of a man causing a disturbance and refusing to leave the property. Officers say they attempted to de-escalate the situation. However, a struggle ensued, resulting in one officer pulling out a taser and another deploying pepper spray. Shortly after Wells was taken into custody, he went into medical distress and died at the scene despite efforts from EMS to revive him. John Wells was known as a champion rodeo participant, becoming a Steer Wrestling Tour champion back in 2012. He previously served as the president of the Blood Tribe Ag Society. ACERT is continuing to investigate the incident and will release more details at a later date. Are Canada's efforts towards reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples working? A discussion about that is up next. Efforts in Canada continue working towards reconciliation with our Indigenous peoples, but not everyone agrees as to how that should happen and what needs to be done. Deborah Manous is the president of the Aboriginal Ministries Association of Alberta. She shares with BCN's Jeanette Roche her experience with part of Canada's troubled past. Take a look.
So Deborah, I understand that you yourself attended a residential school. You've also, I believe, written a book about your experience called Scooped, A Stolen Generation. Can you maybe share what your experience was like?
Yes, definitely. I basically had been taken away from my family at a very young age. I was 4, and there was 6 in my family. Myself and my older brother, we went into one home, and the other children were all separated into 3 different homes. We were all into 3 different homes, and our family, basically, my grandfather, he was the hereditary chief of the community in Calling Lake, which is about 130 miles north of Edmonton. And they went after the kids that were, predominantly, leaders in the community. So then everybody just followed suit. So this was everywhere, all across Canada, that had happened. And fortunately, I was in a good home at the beginning. I was in a wonderful home with some people that were Christian, that were loving and kind. And later on, I went into a facility because they had, wanted us to be switched. And a lot of times that was a problem. So many children, unfortunately, were taken from one facility to another, one home to another. And that caused a lot of, problems for the children. So I do talk about that in my book quite a bit, residential school and what it looked like and how it affected, our people and the whole, system that it had, developed into this nation. And anyways, the scooped part of it, basically, I had learned as I was doing research on the book, was that the term was coined by a worker. She was a social worker. This was during the early 60s.
Yeah,
And
you're
she
talking
said,
about the 60s scoop, right?
yeah,
Which
the 60s
you
scoop.
were a part of.
Yeah. And she basically was going into the home and into different communities, into the homes, scooping up the kids, leaving. Another home, scooping up the kids, leaving. And she coined the term, I'm scooping the kids. So this became the term for the 60s scoop. And there were like pictures all across Canada in the media, as well as newspapers is the media, and magazines and whatnot, of Native children that were being adopted all across Canada and taken into other countries, into a lot of the states, but I heard of other children going into other countries as well. So they were just, adopted out, and the poor parents never got to see their children again.
Yeah. So looking back, Deborah, do you believe that the church and the government leaders were intentionally trying to harm First Nations people through this residential school program? Or do you think, that they were like well-intentioned at the time and simply didn't understand the consequences of this, or, how it would have had such a negative impact?
Well, I think that in some aspects, yes, they were blind by the fact, like just kind of going, oh, we're going to, help them to assimilate, help them to, come to live in a different lifestyle, come to, be in this, society and live like everybody else. And this is how we're going to do it. So they got the churches involved, the different churches involved, the Anglican, the Catholic. I know for that, for my researching with residential schools, that this was the case, as well as, it moved on into 60 Scoop. But, it was, I guess at the beginning, something they thought was a good thing for our people.
And that's not to give them a pass on this, at all,
No.
because of what happened.
No,
was
but it is
terrible.
good to understand the facts, and this is just the facts. And the facts is this is actually what had happened. And then later on, when somebody gets to know and understand what they're doing, then we have to be accountable for it, right?
After the break, we discuss an ambitious project to add Blackfoot language to some of our signage. As you tour around southwestern Alberta, you may have noticed some signage in the Blackfoot language. It is part of a signage project funded by several organizations to enrich the landscape in our region. Jeanette Roche sat down with Arnold Fox, the director of the Blood Tribe Social Development, to learn more.
Now, Arnold, as the director of the Blood Tribe Social Services, I know that you are also involved in a Blackfoot signage project. And just for some background for our viewers, several organizations in southwestern Alberta, I guess, have partnered up with Kainai Nation to fund the construction of Blackfoot language signs across the region. So I guess this is to both enrich the landscape and invite locals and visitors to learn more about the deep history of the region. And I would say have the opportunity to see the translations of certain community names in the Blackfoot language sort of come to life. I find that really interesting. So Arnold, as the director of Blood Tribe Social Services, you're a part of this signage project, which will see these beautiful signs come to life with this language. So tell me more about this project and sort of how it came to be.
Okay, I would like to think that really the idea was planted as part of the TNR, the Truth and Reconciliation. All of the recommendations, I think there was 108 recommendations that came from that. And I've been noticing in southern Alberta, in my world, I travel a lot to Lethbridge. We're not confined. We shop in Fort McLeod, Cardston. So we have a lot of daily interaction with these communities. And the Blackfoot names that were assigned to these communities go way back. Now, there's some newer communities that we're going to have to sit with the elders to develop the name. So South Row is the name of the organization that invited me to join. And so I did. And I didn't really know at first what the extent of the program was. But in our first couple of meetings, I've grown to appreciate that this is a really worthwhile effort for southern Alberta. I don't think there's enough we can do to further the relations between the population here, the Blackfoot or Blood population on Kainai, and the surrounding communities. There's been some excellent relationships that have developed over the years. I can two at this point that are kind of related to what we're doing. It just emphasizes more communication, positive in a positive light. So that's what we're doing with these. Now we're going to open it up. It's open to towns and counties. You know how when you enter a county, you see a little sign?
Like welcome to Tabor or Cardston or
So those are the two kind of that are foremost. Certainly welcome to look at other, but for those two, for the towns and the counties, we're definitely looking and hoping to get applications from them to on this signage.
It's such a fabulous idea, and I just look forward to seeing these new signs going up. And I believe the project is inviting communities, businesses, institutions to take part. And what they can do is, I believe they can apply, is it a $2,000 grant that they can receive for the creation of this sign, right?
with the stipulation they throw in 500. So we're offering them 80% funding for the sign. Yeah. So I should mention also, Jeanette, that I explained to the committee that I'm working, to the signage committee, that there are names for some of the older communities in southern Alberta, but it's not always a direct translation. There's something that strikes our elders that's peculiar about this, and that sometimes they go with that. I'll give you an example, Tabor.
Okay.
Because Tabor sounds similar to table.
Okay.
That's actually that our name for Tabor is Idasuyo, which means something we eat on, which was the name we gave. It's not, whereas Fort McLeod, Agapioyus, means many houses. So that's where the fort was established, and then the community started growing. So we refer to it as many houses. So that's been historically the name. Yes, and Lethbridge, Sikoho, Black Rock, for the coal mining history that Lethbridge was the central part of in southern Alberta.
Up next, the story behind the famous petroglyphs and pictographs of the Writing on Stone Provincial Park. And it's exactly why the park got its name.
Welcome back to our Truth and Reconciliation show. We are on location at Writing on Stone Provincial Park, and joining me is Rebecca. She's my tour guide today. Rebecca, thanks for actually bringing us into the park here. This is amazing.
Awesome. It's really my pleasure. This is a really special place, so I'm glad that we could spend some time here together.
It really is, and my understanding is it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Correct, yeah. So in 2019, this area received a UNESCO designation for outstanding universal value and as a living cultural site. So this place is most associated with the Blackfoot people. It's likely that there have been other First Nations people for whom this place is important as well. But really we're in the heart of Blackfoot country. And this place has always been known as special to the Blackfoot people. This is still a place where people come to visit to connect with this remarkable place.
Yeah. Oh, it's so easy to connect with the land. Like it just feels almost so spiritual when you're here. It's just beautiful. And you have brought us to this amazing spot where there are actually pictographs, petroglyphs right around us. Maybe you can show us some of these.
Sure. I'd be happy
right
to.
now.
So like you mentioned, there are both carvings and paintings, so petroglyphs and pictographs. So some are incised and some are painted using red ochre paint. And if you want to come this way, I'll just point out a few of the markings.
Wow, look at this.
The markings do extend for about 1 kilometer, and they're most concentrated here in this section of the park. That is a restricted access zone, and that is for their protection. Sadly, there has been problems with graffiti and vandalism, so that's something that we're really trying to educate people that is not appropriate for here. The markings that we find right here are very distinctive, and we see lots of individual people who are holding these great big round shields. So
almost like in a circle there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are very large, heavy shields that would be used for protection. And shields were very important in the past, but they also give us a clue to the age of the picture. Because with the introduction of rifles, the shields were less effective. And so usually when we see pictures of shields, that tells us that predates contact with European people. So probably these are more than 300 years old. And there are definitely some that are much older than this as well. So that's one of the ways we can tell the age of the pictures is by what's in the picture. If you see a picture of a gun or a picture of a horse, you know that those are a little bit newer because those were introduced by European people.
So it's almost like a little history book right there on the wall.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
And so, but even going back much further, some of the markings here are probably close to 2,000 years old. And I'll just show you another example. If you look up here, there's another picture of a shield, but it's almost been erased by the weather. Wow. You can see the bottom of the shield right here, and one leg there and one leg there of the warrior. But time has taken a toll and erosion is happening all around us.
I was just going to say, good old erosion.
Yeah. So those would have been even older than these. So there have definitely been people here connecting with this place. This place has always been known as sacred to the First Nations people. And this is considered a place where you could connect with the spirit world. So the ochre pictographs are kind of an exciting area of research in the park. Because using new technology, we can enhance the visibility of some of the paint that is quite faint.
Oh, wow.
So here we can see, using computer software, that we can see a lot more detail on these warriors with their shields. This one you can see has a headdress. This one, where you can hardly see it with the naked eye, but with the enhancement, you can see a lot more detail. So their head is painted, their legs are painted.
Here we can certainly see the passage of time, can't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So for many years it was assumed that these vehicle pictures were made by maybe early settlers or the Northwest Mounted Police that were in this area. But there was a person who really was an expert in the markings, and he started to think that maybe these were made by a Blackfoot artist. And so he kept investigating and doing research, and he ran into somebody who had a photograph that really helped to solve the mystery. So this photo was rediscovered, and it is a picture showing a Blackfoot elder named Bird Rattle carving these vehicle pictures.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for being my personal tour guide out here at Writing on Stone.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for coming.
It's just been fascinating being shown these writings and just kind of understanding the meaning behind them. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for coming.
After the break, stories from around southern Alberta. Don't go away.
We're focusing a lot on allyship this year, what we can do within the community as allies, and how do we better educate ourselves.
Lethbridge Police Service hosted the Social Disorder and Urban Crime Conference for the first time this past week. Urban police services across the province converged at the Sandman Signature Hotel in our city to collaborate and share best practices to tackle a variety of issues such as substance abuse, crime, mental health, and poverty.
My vision of the event was to bring together different police services to kind of walk through what's working, what's not working, and learn from each other's successes and failures. As we've seen, there is no one answer to all these problems we're seeing in Western Canada in relation to the drug crisis, and it's important to learn from other organizations to save ourselves time, money, and wasted resources, basically. I would say one of the most consistent trends is the messaging that methamphetamine is extremely popular and is heavily used across Western Canada. When it comes to opiate deaths, the opiate crisis does draw a lot of attention to the media because a lot of really good people are losing their lives.
While opioid use and overdoses reached a peak during the pandemic, officials say trends have been going downwards. Lethbridge also dwarfed other major cities in Alberta in the number of visits to safe consumption sites from 2018 to 2020. On Monday, the city of Lethbridge celebrated the start of Truth and Reconciliation Week. Officials recalled the importance of continuing to strengthen the path of healing with Indigenous communities. BCN's Heidi Echeverria was at the event at City Hall and has the story.
Although September the 30th is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, today began the activities to honor those who survived the residential schools and those who are no longer with us. The ceremony began with prayer, words that invite to continue building a path of healing and reconciliation. The First Nation coordinator of the Holy Spirit explains what the Week of Truth represents for students.
An Indigenous settler on these lands, that the role that it serves for our students is to really become aware of and become educated to the truth of what happened, and a lot of it is a sense of understanding of identity.
Focusing a lot on allyship this year, what we can do within the community as allies, and how do we better educate ourselves.
For Bridge City News, I'm Heidi Echevarria.
In recognition of Truth and Reconciliation Week, the University of Lethbridge organized special events throughout the week, including one on Tuesday featuring unique stickers and buttons. Lindy Shag, Director of Indigenous Services at the U of L, explains why this week is so important, especially for the students.
And we really just want to promote positive awareness and to really bring all of our student body together to celebrate and honor. I've noticed each year it's grown, so a lot of students and different faculty and departments want to engage with our department more and more. So today is a really good example of all students coming in and participating. And then really the foundation of what we do is really to build relationships.
Promoting messages of hope, reconciliation, friendship, kindness. We have some that are orange in recognition of Orange Shirt Day coming up, and basically celebrating the Indigenous cultures that are represented here at the university and how we can all learn from each other.
The Rocky Mountain Turf Club is hosting another major Indian relay race here in Lethbridge this weekend. The Jason Goodstriker Memorial Championship will feature 2 days of the top Indian warrior races in Western Canada. The weekend honors Jason Goodstriker, remembered as a member of the Blood Tribe, and his love for racing, who passed away in 2020. This will be the fourth and final memorial tournament named after him.
His impact was amazing. You would see Jason announcing at the powwows. You would see him with government and very important issues for the First Nations and growth for them. And it's just endless. He was kind of a bigger than life kind of guy. We start with our thoroughbred races, and we are doing the best of the best. It's stakes races for the B-Track. So big money, those are big races. And the warrior races are going to be following that, and we have 18 teams, so a whole lot of action. We have entertainment, there'll be dancers, drummers, and of course the warriors, and admission is free, and it's always free. You come to the horse races, there's kids' activities and all those things. It's all free admission.
The races will be held today and Sunday, 1 p.m. at the Rocky Mountain Turf Club. Many people don't know a lot about Tourette syndrome. Up next, we learn more about it.